Let's dive into a story that will leave you speechless, a tale of faith, betrayal, and a pursuit for justice that spanned nearly 3 decades. This is not just another mystery, it's the haunting story of a young woman who dedicated her life to God, only to meet a chilling fate that shocked an entire nation. Today, we unravel the case of Sister Abhaya, a 21-year-old nun whose brutal murder in 1992 remained unsolved for 28 years until a breakthrough finally brought the truth to light in December 2020. Our journey begins in the serene and picturesque town of Kottayam, Kerala, a place known for its tranquil backwaters, lush greenery, and deep-rooted spirituality. The town, like much of Kerala, was home to a vibrant Christian community, with churches and convents dotting its peaceful landscape. Life here revolved around faith, prayer, and community, a stark contrast to the sinister events that would soon unfold. Among the town's well-known religious institutions was the St. Pius X convent, a sanctuary for many young women devoted to their spiritual calling. The convent served not only as a place of worship but also as a hostel for students and nuns pursuing their education. It was here that Sister Abhaya, a bright, dedicated, and devout young woman, arrived to fulfill her mission of serving God. But beneath the serene facade of the convent walls lay secrets that would unravel in the most shocking way. Sister Abhaya's life was tragically cut short, and her untimely death would ignite a storm of speculation, conspiracy theories, and a desperate quest for answers. What really happened on that fateful day in 1992? Who could harm a young woman who had committed her life to peace and prayer? And why did it take nearly 3 decades for the truth to emerge? Stay with us as we delve into the intricate details of this case, a story of betrayal within sacred walls, an investigation mired in controversy, and a relentless battle for justice that would span decades. This is not just the story of Sister Abhaya, it is a testament to the resilience of those who refuse to let her memory fade away. This tale will take you into the heart of a community torn apart, into the corridors of power where justice was obstructed, and into the minds of investigators who pieced together a puzzle no one wanted to solve. Prepare yourself for a story filled with twists, turns, and revelations that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about faith, humanity, and justice. Sister Abhaya was a dedicated young woman who balanced her spiritual calling with the demands of her education. At just 21 years old, she was enrolled in a pre-degree college and had upcoming exams looming on her schedule. Determined to excel, she resolved to wake up early one morning to squeeze in some extra study time. The convent, usually a place of quiet discipline, was no stranger to the sound of early risers preparing for their day. On the night before, Sister Abhaya set her alarm and tucked herself into bed, her heart filled with hope and determination. Her fellow nuns and hostel mates bid her good night, none of them knowing that this would be the last time they would see her alive. The convent walls, which had always been a sanctuary, were about to bear witness to an unthinkable tragedy. As the clock struck 4 a.m. the soft chime of her alarm stirred her awake. Ever diligent, she greeted a few of her friends as she prepared for the day ahead. She gathered her books and settled in for her studies, flipping through the pages with focus and resolve. But as the early morning hours crept by, she felt the need for a brief break, a chance to refresh herself and regain her concentration. Leaving her books behind, Sister Abhaya quietly made her way to the convent's kitchen. Perhaps she was going to drink a glass of water, or maybe she intended to splash her face with cool water to shake off the lingering traces of sleep. Whatever her reason, it was a routine, almost mundane decision, one that countless students have made in their pursuit of success. But this simple act would mark the beginning of a sequence of events that no one could have foreseen. The next morning, the sun rose over the convent, casting its golden light over a scene of serene routine. But something was amiss. As the other nuns stirred awake and began their morning prayers, they quickly noticed that Sister Abhaya was nowhere to be found. Her absence was unusual, especially for someone so disciplined and punctual. Concern began to ripple through the convent, and the search for her began. It was in the kitchen that the first signs of something deeply unsettling came to light. A water bottle sat on the counter, its cap left ajar. Water had spilled onto the floor, forming a glistening puddle that caught the morning light. Nearby lay one of Sister Abhaya's slippers, abandoned as if in haste. The scene was strange, eerie even, but it offered no clear answers. Where was Sister Abhaya? The urgency of the search escalated as worry gave way to fear. The nuns and hostel residents combed through the convent grounds, their voices calling out her name, but no response came. It was then, near the convent's well, that they made a chilling discovery. Lying near the edge of the well was Sister Abhaya's other slipper, a silent and ominous clue. One of the nuns, trembling with dread, peered into the dark, shadowy depths of the well. What she saw made her blood run cold. Floating in the still water below was the lifeless body of Sister Abhaya. The horror of the moment gripped everyone as the grim reality set in. This was no ordinary disappearance. A tragedy had unfolded within the sacred confines of their home. The fire department was summoned, and soon, Sister Abhaya's body was retrieved from the well. The air was thick with grief and disbelief as the nuns and residents watched the scene unfold. Just hours earlier, they had shared a meal with her, laughing over light-hearted conversations, discussing future plans, and even groaning playfully about her early morning alarm. And now, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. The silence that fell over the convent that day was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos and sorrow that gripped its residents. The question hung in the air, unanswered but unavoidable: how did a young woman, full of life and promise, meet such a tragic end in a place meant to protect her? What truly happened in those dark, early hours of the morning? This was just the beginning of a mystery that would unravel over decades, a mystery shrouded in layers of deceit, fear, and betrayal. It would challenge the faith of an entire community and reveal dark secrets hidden within walls meant for prayer and devotion. Stay with us as we uncover the chilling details of what happened to Sister Abhaya, a story that shook the nation and left an indelible mark on its history. The sight of Sister Abhaya's lifeless body being carried out of the well was a heart-wrenching moment for everyone present. Her friends and fellow nuns, who had just shared laughter and plans with her the night before, were now overcome with grief and shock. The serene atmosphere of the convent was shattered, replaced by an air of unease and unanswered questions. Local police officer V.V. Augustine arrived at the scene to conduct the initial investigation. Following standard protocol, he documented the situation, called in a photographer to capture images of the body in the surrounding area, and arranged for Sister Abhaya's body to be sent for an autopsy. But as the investigation began, it became clear that this case was anything but straightforward. During the autopsy, doctors discovered cuts and bruises on Sister Abhaya's body, along with a head injury. Despite these alarming findings, the official cause of death was listed as drowning. The report left room for ambiguity, noting both the possibility of suicide and foul play. However, for many, this conclusion raised more questions than it answered. Why would a young woman who had set an alarm to wake up early and study decide to end her life? Why was the fridge door left open, water spilled on the floor, and her slipper abandoned in the kitchen? The chaotic scene painted a picture of haste or struggle, one that didn't align with a suicide narrative. For those who knew her, the idea of Sister Abhaya taking her own life was inconceivable. As whispers of doubt grew louder, many began to suspect that this was not a case of suicide but a cold-blooded murder. The circumstances were far too suspicious, and the setting, a convent, a place of peace and devotion, made the tragedy all the more unsettling. The possibility of a cover-up began to emerge, further fueling outrage and suspicion. The local community was deeply shaken. This wasn't just about the death of a young woman, it was about the sanctity of a place that was meant to be a safe haven for learning, worship, and spiritual growth. How could such a horrific event occur within the walls of a convent? And if it was indeed a murder, who would commit such an act, and why? An activist named Jomon Puthan Purakal, moved by the gravity of the case, formed a committee to demand justice for Sister Abhaya. He and others in the community refused to let her death be swept under the rug. Under mounting public pressure, the case was handed over to the crime branch on April 16, 1992. The crime branch investigation, however, left many disappointed. After months of probing, they concluded that Sister Abhaya's death was a suicide. This ruling outraged those who had been following the case, as it seemed to ignore the glaring inconsistencies and suspicious circumstances surrounding her death. By this point, Sister Abhaya's body had already been buried, and her clothes, potentially critical evidence, had been destroyed. The lack of solid forensic evidence only added to the frustration. Despite the crime branch's conclusion, the case refused to fade from public consciousness. It became a lightning rod for media coverage, with newspapers and television channels running endless stories and speculations. The people of Kerala, from small villages to bustling cities, discussed the case fervently, each person offering their own theories about what might have happened to Sister Abhaya. The growing public outcry, combined with dissatisfaction among the nuns and residents of the convent, ensured that the case could not be closed so easily. The mounting pressure from activists, media, and society as a whole forced the authorities to escalate the matter. The case was handed over to India's Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, a move that marked a new chapter in the quest for justice. The CBI began their investigation with a fresh perspective, revisiting old evidence and re-interviewing witnesses. They approached the case methodically, determined to uncover the truth that had eluded investigators for so long. The question remained, would the CBI finally crack the case, or would Sister Abhaya's death remain an unsolved mystery buried in the annals of history? The story of Sister Abhaya's death, now a national sensation, was no longer just a local tragedy. It had become a symbol of the fight for justice against the forces of corruption, secrecy, and power. With each new revelation, the case grew more complex, its twists and turns capturing the imagination of an entire nation. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, but at what cost? As the investigation into Sister Abhaya's death continued, the twists and turns of the case only deepened the mystery. The shocking press conference held by CBI officer Verghese P. Thomas in 1994 added an explosive layer to the story. During this conference, Thomas made an extraordinary revelation: he had been under immense pressure to declare the case a suicide. This unexpected admission stunned everyone. Why would anyone pressure an officer to close a case prematurely, especially one so steeped in controversy? The implications were damning. Thomas felt the pressure was so intense and unethical that he chose to resign from his position, a decision that cost him 9 years of service before his official retirement. His statement reignited public outrage, casting a shadow of doubt over the integrity of the investigation and raising questions about the forces working behind the scenes to stifle the truth. With renewed vigor, the CBI pushed forward, determined to find answers. They faced a daunting task, as most of the crucial physical evidence had already been destroyed, including Sister Abhaya's clothing and other potential forensic materials. To compensate, the investigators turned to creative methods, conducting experiments to simulate the circumstances of her death. One such experiment involved creating a life-size dummy replicating Sister Abhaya's height and weight. They threw the dummy into the convent's well under various conditions, meticulously documenting the injuries sustained in each scenario. These injuries were then compared to those found on Sister Abhaya's body. While the tests provided insights into how her body might have entered the well, they did little to clarify whether her death was a tragic accident, a suicide, or something more sinister. By 1996, after 3 years of relentless effort, the CBI submitted a report stating their belief that Sister Abhaya's death should be treated as a murder. The report acknowledged the investigative roadblocks, citing insufficient evidence and the failure to identify any suspects. This conclusion, though significant, left the case in limbo. For years after her death, the questions surrounding Sister Abhaya's final moments remained as murky as ever. The initial CBI team's findings were rejected by the authorities, and a new team was assigned to the case. This fresh team revisited every aspect of the investigation, interviewing witnesses, analyzing old reports, and conducting further forensic analysis. By 1999, after another 3 years of meticulous work, they reached a definitive conclusion: Sister Abhaya's death was a murder. This breakthrough was largely based on new medical evidence. A group of 3 independent doctors reviewed the autopsy findings and discovered critical injuries that had been overlooked in the original postmortem. These injuries, including significant trauma to her head, suggested a violent struggle. This evidence directly contradicted the earlier suicide narrative and pointed to foul play. To truly understand the gravity of this discovery, we must revisit the day of Sister Abhaya's tragic death. Several nuns who saw her body before it was removed from the well-noted visible injuries that raised immediate suspicion. Officer V.V. Augustine, who was one of the first responders to the scene, had even called a photographer to document these injuries. The photographs taken that day would later become crucial pieces of evidence, revealing inconsistencies in the initial reports. But even as the evidence mounted, the mystery deepened. Who could have committed such a heinous crime within the walls of a convent? The investigation delved into the lives of the convent's residents, uncovering secrets and tensions that had remained hidden behind its austere facade. The question of motive became central. Was Sister Abhaya a victim of a random act of violence, or did her death stem from something darker, perhaps even a clash of interests or values within the convent itself? The CBI continued to face resistance at every turn. Witnesses were reluctant to speak, and key figures linked to the case either disappeared or remained tight-lipped. Despite the mounting pressure from activists and the media, progress was painstakingly slow. The public's patience wore thin, but their demand for justice never waned. As the investigation trudged forward, one thing became clear: Sister Abhaya's death was not an isolated tragedy. It symbolized a broader struggle for transparency, accountability, and justice in a system riddled with corruption and secrecy. This fight was no longer just about uncovering the truth, it was about ensuring that no other young woman would have to meet a similar fate within the confines of a place meant to nurture and protect. The story was far from over. The new CBI team's findings reignited hope, but with no suspects named and no arrests made, the case remained an open wound for Sister Abhaya's family, her fellow nuns, and the community at large. The nation watched anxiously as the wheels of justice turned ever so slowly, waiting for the day when the truth would finally come to light. The revelation from 2007 marked a significant turning point in the case of Sister Abhaya, a mystery that had haunted Kerala for 15 long years. What made this moment truly astonishing was the identity of the witness, a thief. This man, whose life was far removed from the cloistered world of the convent, unexpectedly became the key to unlocking one of the state's most perplexing cases. The thief, who had been lurking near the convent on the fateful night of Sister Abhaya's death, claimed he had seen something shocking. According to his testimony, he witnessed 2 priests and a nun at the convent behaving suspiciously. He alleged that he had seen these individuals moving around nervously near the well, and what he described next would send shockwaves across the nation. The thief claimed he saw the lifeless body of Sister Abhaya being carried towards the well by the 2 priests, with the nun assisting. He recounted how he had been too terrified to intervene or report the incident at the time, fearing repercussions. However, as years passed and the case gained prominence, his conscience weighed heavily on him, compelling him to come forward with the truth. This testimony was a bombshell. For the first time in the investigation, there were concrete allegations against individuals within the convent. The suspects identified by the thief were 2 priests, Father Thomas Kator and Father Jose Puthrakale, and a nun, Sister Sephi. These 3 had been part of the convent's inner circle, and their alleged involvement in such a crime shocked not only the religious community but the entire state. Armed with this new testimony, the CBI intensified its investigation. They began piecing together the events of that fateful night, questioning the suspects and re-examining old evidence. The forensic experts revisited the injuries on Sister Abhaya's body, confirming that the marks were consistent with physical assault. It was becoming increasingly clear that her death was not an accident or a suicide, it was a brutal murder. The CBI's interrogation of the suspects brought to light a chilling motive. The investigators alleged that Sister Abhaya had stumbled upon the priests and the nun in a compromising situation during her early morning study break. Fearing that she might expose them, they decided to silence her forever. This theory, though horrifying, explained many of the inconsistencies in the case, including the hurried cleanup of the crime scene and the destruction of crucial evidence. In 2008, the CBI finally arrested the three suspects, Father Thomas Couture, Father Jose Puthrakale, and Sister Sephi. The arrests were met with a mix of relief and outrage. While many hailed it as a long overdue step towards justice, others, particularly within the church, vehemently defended the accused, claiming they were being falsely implicated. The court proceedings were intense, with the defense and prosecution presenting conflicting narratives. The defense argued that the thief's testimony was unreliable, given his criminal background and the long gap between the incident and his statement. They also pointed to the lack of direct evidence linking the suspects to the crime. The prosecution, however, relied heavily on forensic findings, witness testimonies, and the suspicious behavior of the suspects in the years following Sister Abhaya's death. The case dragged on for years, with multiple delays and appeals. The suspects were released on bail several times, and public interest in the case fluctuated as it seemed to be stuck in an endless loop of legal battles. Activists and media outlets continued to highlight the case, ensuring that it remained in the public eye. One of the most dramatic moments in the trial came when a forensic expert testified about the injuries on Sister Abhaya's body. The expert described how the head injury was likely caused by a blunt object, such as an axe or a heavy stick, and how the timing of the injury coincided with her death. This testimony reinforced the murder theory and cast further suspicion on the accused. Finally, after decades of investigation and legal wrangling, the case reached its conclusion in December 2020. The court found Father Thomas Couture and Sister Sephi guilty of the murder of Sister Abhaya. Father Jose Puthrakale was acquitted due to lack of evidence directly linking him to the crime. The verdict was a landmark moment, bringing some closure to a case that had gripped the nation for nearly 3 decades. The court sentenced Father Thomas Couture to life imprisonment and Sister Sephi to a lesser term, considering mitigating factors. While the verdict was celebrated as a victory for justice, it also left lingering questions about the systemic failures that had allowed the case to remain unresolved for so long. Sister Abhaya's tragic story remains a stark reminder of the need for accountability and transparency, even within the most revered institutions. Her death exposed the dark underbelly of corruption, power struggles, and moral failings in a place meant to embody faith and sanctity. For the people of Kerala and the wider world, the case is not just about one young woman's untimely death, it is a symbol of the resilience of truth in the face of overwhelming odds. Sister Abhaya's legacy lives on, a beacon of hope for those who continue to fight for justice, no matter how long it takes. Accepted responsibility for Sister Abhaya's death. But despite all this, Adakar Raju refused to confess to a crime he insisted he hadn't committed. His story about what he saw that night, however, never wavered. This was not the work of a thief gone wrong, he argued, it was something much darker. The authorities' attempt to pin the murder on Adakar Raju exposed deep flaws in the investigation. It became evident that they were more interested in closing the case than finding the real culprits. The torture allegations raised questions about the integrity of the investigation and created public outrage. Raju's eventual release after 58 harrowing days only added to the mystery. The focus soon shifted back to the original suspects, Father Thomas Couture, Father Jose Puthrakale, and Sister Sephi. By this time, the case had become a national scandal. Activists, journalists, and the public were demanding justice for Sister Abhaya, who, for so long, had been denied peace even in death. As the investigations progressed, more witnesses began to speak up, and their accounts painted an increasingly sinister picture. One of the most damning pieces of evidence came from a forensic expert who re-examined Sister Abhaya's injuries. He noted blunt force trauma to her head, which he concluded could not have occurred from simply falling into the well. Additionally, a new medical report highlighted discrepancies in the original post-mortem findings. This report indicated that some injuries had been intentionally overlooked, likely to mislead investigators. The injuries on Sister Abhaya's head and neck suggested a violent altercation, not an accident or suicide. During their interrogations, the suspects exhibited behaviors that further raised suspicions. Father Thomas Kator, who was known for his authoritative demeanor, reportedly became defensive and evasive when questioned about his whereabouts on the night of Sister Abhaya's death. Sister Sephi's role in the case was equally perplexing. Investigators found that her alibi did not hold up under scrutiny. Moreover, forensic tests revealed an unusual detail. Sister Sephi had undergone a surgical procedure shortly after the incident, allegedly to alter a physical feature that might have been incriminating. This revelation added another layer of intrigue and suspicion to the case. In 2007, a secret witness came forward, further solidifying the case against the accused. This witness, a fellow nun at the convent, claimed to have heard unusual noises on the night of the incident. She described hearing a loud thud, followed by muffled voices and hurried footsteps. Though she didn't see anything directly, her testimony corroborated the thief's account and the forensic findings. As the trial moved forward, the defense tried every tactic to discredit the evidence and witnesses. They argued that the testimonies were inconsistent and that the forensic evidence was circumstantial at best. They even suggested that the intense media scrutiny had biased the investigation. Despite these efforts, the weight of the evidence was undeniable. In 2020, nearly 3 decades after Sister Abhaya's tragic death, the court delivered its long-awaited verdict. Father Thomas Kator and Sister Sephi were found guilty of murder, while Father Jose Puthrakale was acquitted due to insufficient evidence. The court sentenced Father Kator to life imprisonment and Sister Sephi to a rigorous prison term, bringing some semblance of justice to Sister Abhaya's memory. The verdict was met with mixed emotions. For many, it was a victory for truth and justice, proving that no one, not even those in positions of power within sacred institutions, was above the law. For others, the lengthy process highlighted the systemic failures that allowed the case to remain unresolved for so long. Sister Abhaya's story is more than just a tale of tragedy, it is a testament to the resilience of those who fought tirelessly for justice. Her case continues to inspire conversations about accountability, transparency, and the importance of questioning authority, even in the most revered institutions. As we remember Sister Abhaya, we are reminded of the power of persistence and the enduring fight for truth in the face of darkness. Her legacy will forever be a beacon for those seeking justice, no matter how insurmountable the odds may seem. Cases in which Adhakar Raju had been implicated, attempting to label him as untrustworthy and discredit his testimony. But Raju remained unshaken. He consistently stuck to his version of events, which were corroborated by circumstantial evidence and, more importantly, the forensic findings. As the trial dragged on, deeper layers of the case began to unravel. Investigators uncovered irregularities in the convent's daily activities and questionable behavior from several individuals within its walls. Sister Sephi, in particular, became a focal point of the inquiry. It was revealed that Sister Sephi had undergone hymenoplasty, a surgical procedure to reconstruct her virginity, shortly after the incident. This raised eyebrows, as it suggested a desperate attempt to cover up improprieties. Coupled with reports of an alleged illicit relationship between her and Father Thomas Kator, the evidence against them began to mount. Father Kator, once a respected figure in the community, struggled to explain his whereabouts on the night of Sister Abhaya's death. Witnesses like the neighbor who saw his scooter parked near the convent added weight to the theory that he was present at the scene during the crucial hours. What made the case particularly difficult to resolve was the sheer power and influence wielded by the accused. Father Kator and Father Jose Puthrakale were prominent figures in the church, and their connections reached deep into political and law enforcement circles. Over the years, multiple CBI teams had faced interference and immense pressure to declare the case either a suicide or unsolvable. Witnesses were coerced, evidence was tampered with, and investigators were shuffled out or silenced when they got too close to the truth. One chilling example of this was the mysterious disappearance of Sister Abhaya's personal diary. This diary, which could have provided critical insights into her state of mind and the events leading up to her death, was allegedly destroyed on the orders of influential individuals within the convent. Despite these obstacles, the persistence of the investigators and the courage of witnesses like Adhakar Raju began to pay off. In 2008, forensic experts presented new evidence that linked the injuries on Sister Abhaya's body to blunt force trauma consistent with an attack. Additionally, traces of a specific sedative were found in her system, suggesting that she may have been drugged before being assaulted. These findings contradicted earlier claims that she had accidentally fallen into the well. The CBI pieced together a grim narrative. Sister Abhaya had likely stumbled upon a compromising situation involving Father Kador, Sister Sefi, and possibly Father Puthrakale in the convent's kitchen during the early hours of March 27, 1992. Fearing exposure, the trio allegedly attacked her, rendering her unconscious with a blow to the head, and then disposed of her body by dumping it in the well. By 2019, after decades of delays, the case finally reached its conclusion in court. The defense tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial and the witnesses unreliable. They claimed that the prosecution had constructed a story to fit their theory, rather than presenting concrete proof. However, the prosecution countered with a strong case built on forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and the suspicious behavior of the accused. The court heard about the lengths to which the accused had gone to obstruct justice, including destroying evidence and intimidating witnesses. In December 2020, the court delivered a landmark verdict. Father Thomas Kador and Sister Sefi were found guilty of murder, destruction of evidence, and conspiracy. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, bringing an end to one of India's longest and most controversial murder investigations. Father Jose Puthrakale, however, was acquitted due to lack of evidence directly implicating him. While the verdict provided some closure, it also left lingering questions. How could a case involving such heinous crimes go unresolved for nearly 3 decades? Why did it take so long for the truth to emerge? And how many other crimes remain hidden behind the walls of powerful institutions? Today, Sister Abhaya is remembered not just as a victim of a tragic crime, but as a symbol of the fight for justice against overwhelming odds. Her case exposed the dark underbelly of corruption, power, and institutional cover-ups. Her story serves as a reminder that no matter how powerful the forces of suppression may be, the truth has a way of coming to light. The legacy of Sister Abhaya will continue to inspire those who seek justice for the voiceless and the oppressed, ensuring that her memory lives on as a beacon of hope and resilience. The case of Sister Abhaya's murder is not just a chilling tale of crime but a testament to the long, arduous fight for justice against systemic corruption and abuse of power. With twists, shocking revelations, and the resilience of unlikely heroes like Adakar Raju, it gripped the nation and uncovered deep-rooted issues within powerful institutions. Even after the convictions in 2020, the case continues to resonate with the public. Documentaries, books, and countless discussions highlight the bravery of those who refuse to let the truth be buried. The narco test revelations, though controversial, became a pivotal element in ensuring that justice was served. The role of the media, the CBI, and whistleblowers like Raju shows how persistence can break through even the most fortified walls of secrecy. It's also a reminder of the power of small actions. Raju, a man with a troubled past, chose to speak up despite knowing it could ruin him, proving that truth and courage can emerge from the most unexpected sources. The verdict set a legal precedent in India, especially in cases involving powerful entities. It underscored the need for independent investigations, transparency in handling evidence, and the importance of standing firm in the face of intimidation. However, the case also left lingering questions. How many such crimes are swept under the rug? Are institutions doing enough to protect whistleblowers? What reforms are needed to ensure that no other family waits 28 years for justice? Sister Abhaya's case will forever serve as a symbol of resilience for those fighting for justice. Her story reminds us of the strength required to challenge the powerful, the value of truth, and the need for systemic change to prevent similar tragedies. What do you think about this journey of uncovering the truth? Would you like to discuss more such cases or explore how such investigations could be improved in the future?